My goodness.
What you need to do, Mr. Whitener, is you need to make the titles of your videos sound really cool.
Really cool.
So they'll click on
And this.
and you'll get a view, but even if they realize it's
Yeah,
not that much,
I know.
they click off and you still.
Like.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
His video from 6 months ago,
You should.
The Rise of Gaius Marius, has 143 views.
Listen, you
that's
have to.
Because I'm going to tell you why. There's not that many videos on YouTube that have to do with this Roman figure. He's kind of like Julius Caesar before Julius Caesar. So I think people were watching it hoping for something different. Really, I just talked over PowerPoints. Hey, folks, it is October the 7th, and we're going to talk a little bit more about World War One.
He would say this every day.
Just as a point, make sure that you go into Canvas and make sure you're familiar with the syllabus, your rights as a student, and all that other stuff. So it's been here the whole time. I thought
He
you
would
were
literally say that every
like,
day.
I'm going to check my emails because I know I've been sending out messages.
He would be like, okay, we're gonna start our live stream for Mariah. And
I
then
feel bad.
Don't feel bad. You're fine. You're fine.
Right, his YouTube channel has all the.
What it is,
Yeah.
Mariah, what it is it's my fault. It's really my fault. I should have made sure that
But it's partly.
got the information.
Well, I kind of assumed you didn't do it because half
a
of
lot
my
of other teachers
don't.
aren't doing it. The
All
only
Let me just show you something. Let me show you something.
Miss
Let me
Cook
pause
was the
that.
only one that
I'll
would
show
do it, like,
you
on
my
YouTube.
favorite
That was, yeah, she does it, and then Miss Martinez, because I was the only one that
He's so
Man.
funny.
needed it for mock trial.
Yeah, that's so funny. Here, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you my playlist because
I'm
like
glad
I
I
do
know
that.
now.
Yeah, but let you know now too. You need to go back and look at this because this has all the information we said. Like, okay, so this is all the Rome stuff. But see, look at this. If it has a DC next to it, it's dual credit. We've been doing it like, look, it's been like about 30 to 45 minutes a class.
Okay.
He has
How long does that
39
take?
videos
That's a lot.
on it.
How long does that take to upload every day? Or are they like,
Since it's live stream,
oh, it is.
I don't have to upload it. I just
Yeah,
I
what
just
it
edit
does is it automatically uploads after the live stream.
That's cool.
You should
Wow.
really be like,
it's okay. It's because I'm the only teacher who uses YouTube instead of Google. So like, and there's reasons why, right? There's some students who, for legal reasons, they cannot be on camera or have their voices recorded, right? And so, and like on Google, they can turn on their mic and they'll just start spouting out stuff. I'm like, what? Be quiet. So
Yeah.
this way, if you want to say something, they just type in the chat right there, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I'll look at that. But and it like if you have data problems, you can dial down the resolution or the download FPS or whatever to like 144.
You should make the names like cool, like Whitener Wednesday.
That's not cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's like people think it has something to do with toothpaste or something.
True, but like the Cold War, I don't know. But like make them cool and then like put cool like
Like the Rise of Gaius Marius was cool.
yeah like the rest.
So yeah, but here's the thing. Like because a lot of my students didn't subscribe and they forget to go back down to the link, I'm afraid that they won't know if it's for them or not. They'll be like, well, I don't know this because they don't pay attention and they're not really sure what we're doing anyway. So and that's my feeling once again as a teacher. But just you know,
I don't know. I should have checked.
have you been reading the book?
Yes.
Hey, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I don't always agree with the book, but I'm glad you read. So, but that's
It
okay.
took me 5 tries
Okay.
to get the right book.
We're gonna
Do you have it, Bob?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Finally, it is very big and it is red and it's the right book.
but in any case, let's go ahead and do our quick warm-ups. So, we do warm-ups in class. The offline kids or online kids only do. So, in response to public concern over issues raised by Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, the federal government expanded its role in. We've talked a bit about this book in the past. Working with labor unions to increase worker salaries, taking responsibility for the safety of consumers, setting limits on the growth of private industry, and implementing social welfare programs. So, yeah, because it says I have one person, unless it's counting me as that one person, which,
You know, I think it's fine.
so I'm my
It
own
doesn't-
viewer.
If you're the one streaming it, it doesn't count.
Okay. Well, somebody's.
Just ask who's watching. Wait, say, can you please comment who you are?
Well, you just asked it. They can-
It might be you, if it's very consistent, like there's never nobody.
No, there's, no, a lot of times I'll turn on, it'll be 0. So,
Okay, then it's not you, somebody's just religiously watching your, like,
that's okay.
Someone's like, oh my gosh, it's 1:10. We have to have Mr. Whitener's live stream.
It'd be nice if they hit the like button.
The college student, you're the only person he's passing his history.
Yeah, he's like, my teacher sucks. I think it was his class.
That would be sad because, like, I know for us, the regular TGC professors and still credit teachers are supposed to have a lecture portion, right? So, yeah, what's the answer? What did the government do after that?
G? Wait.
Yeah, take same responsibility for safe consumers. Yeah, because it was like a horrifying book, though it's a fiction. It outlawed, it made people aware of bad working conditions. He wrote about things like workers falling in the lard vat and then just scooping the bones out and then still canning the lard for people to eat. So,
People
yeah,
eat lard.
yeah, well, see, back then, people weren't quite health conscientious the way you are. Yeah, just think about like you have a piece of bread, you take yourself a slab of Crisco, like it's peanut butter, make a sandwich and go off to work. And later, when you have your little lunch break, just eat your lard sandwich and you're good to go. Heart's still ticking for a little bit.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's like pig
It
butter.
tastes good.
Well, not that way, I would imagine. I mean,
Peanut
yeah.
butter tastes 100% better than Crisco.
No, peanut butter's,
What's
it's making
Crisco?
its own. Crisco, isn't that lard, right?
Yes.
And it's the same thing. Yeah, good old lard. I mean, that's like,
Lard sandwich.
if you
Oh my-
want legit Tex-Mex, you gotta have some lard.
You do use it to like make certain.
Yeah, like refried beans and, you wanna fry, like, yeah, that's what makes refried beans the way it is. Put a little lard in it. Cook it again.
I'm never eating refried beans
I don't think
again.
about,
Like, you don't have to, but if you want it like authentic.
I don't like
I suddenly feel so.
If it's good, I'll just do it.
Lard.
I think that sides get in the way of the main menu item, so that's just my opinion. But yeah, taking responsibility for the safety of consumers. So this book, it's like a big push for progressivism. And surprise, surprise, the author was an early socialist. And so later on, you'll see the progressive movement definitely lean more in that direction.
it's good.
All right, so we're on my progressive era slides. And I think this is the
Yeah,
last place.
We looked at that video.
That's correct. So yeah,
That's our homeboy Vladimir.
yeah, oh Vlad. So yeah,
No,
Vladimir Lenin.
Vladimir too.
So we were talking about just some of the many changes that go on in the world after
The joke wasn't
World War I.
The way you like laugh at your own jokes, so, yeah.
There you go. You know it's funny if you can laugh at it.
Joseph, you're fine.
So, all right, so we talked about this.
Yep.
So now who's this fella with his top hat
That's
off?
the evil. That's the evil Vladimir, right?
Look at that flag.
That
See
is
that
not
one
Vladimir
flag
Putin,
behind
sorry.
him
America.
with the stars? Yeah, he's the
Oh,
American
never mind.
president, and his name was Woodrow
Woodrow.
Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, very good. Yeah, so if you remember, he became president as the first Democrat president in a long time, but he's still a progressively minded fellow, just like the Republicans were. And here he is, after making a voyage to be the first sitting U.S. president to go overseas. And he's going to go overseas to try to help out with the peace treaty and push some of his ideas that he's had on like making world peace and stuff like that. So remember, he said this was supposed to be the last war in the world because it was just so big and disgusting. So speaking of disgusting, Wilson was disgusted by the secret deals and warfare in Europe. So remember, when the commies took over in Russia, they showed a lot of what these nations and these kingdoms and empires were like conspiring under the table to carve up other people's countries. And they're like, look how bad they are. Well, Wilson didn't like that either. And so he's going to draw up his desires for worldwide change in his 14 points. And so what does 14 points have to do with? I'm not going to make you memorize all 14 points, but you should be familiar with the main theme. So he called for no more secret treaties. If you're going to have a treaty between two countries, put it out in the open. Another, freedom of the seas, and also reduction of trade barriers. That means, the ocean's a place where anybody can sail, open markets throughout the world. Let's connect each other up. And also get rid of things like tariffs and stuff like that. Remember, that's what his base didn't like tariffs because it artificially brought up the price of goods and it kind of taxed the consumer, like farmers didn't like that. We have self-determination. That's the idea. We're a people who live in an area and they speak their own language and they have their own customs, can have their own country and not be ruled by foreigners, like imperialism, right? Like Europe loved to do so much. And the creation of a General Association of Nations. It's like, so he thinks that,
Like the UN.
yeah, like the UN, he thinks countries should get together, kind of like a one world Congress, and not necessarily make laws for each other, but come up with things that could help, like prevent wars. Idea. So, like, hey, instead of having countries fight it out, we could talk about it, negotiate, and other countries could help things out. That's the idea.
Wait, so freedom of the seas, unless you're a U-boat attacking
Yeah, right. Like, not freedom of the seas where you just go around just murdering folks, but yeah, freedom of the seas for the sake of trade. Like, think about it like open borders on the ocean, right? Like saying you just can't own the Pacific Ocean and not let anybody else do trade to these other countries.
So, did he come up with these on his own, or did he have?
I honestly can't tell you. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that these things came from, like the idea of free trade, no secret treaties, and things like that. Those things do have long-running American influences behind them. Now, the General Association of Nations, he's the first public figure that I know in the American scene that's calling for something like that. Americans before this time were not all that what I would call foreign policy interested, right? It was all about focusing inward. In December of 1918, he arrived in France for the peace conferences in Versailles, in France. At this time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was no more. It was divided up into Austria, Hungary, and it also created new nations of Poland and Czechoslovakia. And we're going to see how they
Where is Versailles?
in France.
American made most of the decisions.
German monarchies vanished into a republic called the Weimar Republic. It's going to be very unpopular in Germany. It's going to help lead to the rise of Hitler later on.
Why is that?
Well, it's going to be a legislative body that's going to be seen as a puppet of foreign nations. It's going to be a parliament that doesn't have a lot of power. So a lot of the common people are going to see it as just like inept, feeble. Then you have this guy Hitler, who's going to be democratically voted into having the power he had based on his popularity, because he says, I'm going to break the rules and I'm going to make sure that you're prosperous and that you have pride again. And people are going to be like, yeah, we're tired of being weak. And also the Russian monarchy, as we saw, you had, go ahead. You had a temporary parliamentary system, bless you, in Russia developed, where the Duma had all the power. That was basically their Congress. And then the Bolsheviks took a handful of guys with guns, managed to go in there and say, do what we want to or else. And they did what they wanted them to. And they wound up and they shot most of them anyway. And the Ottoman Empire was set up for division. So you might remember from our Civ classes, like the Ottoman Empire used to be, It used to be the first world. Back in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, it was Europe that was the third world. The Ottoman Empire was huge and it spread it all throughout the world. They had trade networks going on through China and Africa, Europe, and all these other places. But by this time, the sultans were very inept. A lot of the Ottomans' economy was taken over by Europeans. Europeans went in, made trade deals where they had all the advantages. They couldn't even be put on trial. You know, like a European, like a Frenchman, could go into certain parts of the Ottoman Empire, kill somebody, and they weren't allowed to charge them for murder. They had to send them home. Their armies were backwards. They tried to modernize them. They had pushback. They didn't work. It was just falling apart. And Europe really wanted their land. Russians wanted their land. French, Greeks wanted independence because they were taken over by the Ottomans. So yeah, they were like, just all these things were falling apart after the First World War. Everybody was so gung ho to get into it, and then they all regretted it. The most of the nations were represented at the peace conference, except for Germany, who lost and everybody was mad at, and Russia, who was run by communists that everybody was scared of. Britain, Italy, France, and America made most of the decisions. Actually, really almost all the decisions were made by Britain and France. Really.
Because we were the winners.
Well, I mean, like they saw us as new kids on the block. They're like, hey, you didn't, not that many of you died. It's like, come on, you're just America. That's the first time we really talked to you. Yeah, so.
We went to war with Britain, would we win?
Today,
Yeah.
absolutely. Especially in the past 10 years, they've downsized their military so much. They are good at making weapons and stuff like that. I think their military industries do kind of well, but they don't really field a good army, and even their navy's been withdrawn a lot. So
Why is that?
I think some of it had to do with their integration with the UN, and I think some of it has to do with cost. England and Britain, their economy is not doing that well, right? It's been kind of tanking really hard, and it takes a lot of money to keep that stuff afloat. So you got like places like America, giant militaries.
We have to go, son of a gun.
Who has the biggest military? We do? You have one?
Well, I think we do. I think as far as like manpower, it might be China as far as the amount of soldiers, but the amount of cash spent into it, it's us by far. Like we got the best stuff, right?
Like a real gun.
Yeah, they're developing all kinds of stuff. Now we are kind of getting. I mean, the thing is, though, I mean, like warfare is moving in so many different directions. It's hard for people like, even people who try to pay attention to it to keep up. I mean, there's things like drones, anti-drones.
There's this little
Yeah,
robot
rail
that's like a
weapons.
dog. And it'll walk around, but it's kind of like not very smart. And so it was like told to like walk around, and then it fell over, and I haven't seen it since then. So I don't think it has.
All right.
Have you seen the Boston, what is it called? Boston Electronics or something like that? There's this really great dog.
Robot.
Yeah, a robot dog that can like do anything.
Oh yeah. They've been talking about doing those kind of things like carry supplies.
So it's China, India, and then US.
But we spend the most per capita, right?
Yeah.
In cash.
And then there's North Korea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, that's like half the countries. The ones who eat are considered in the military. So I mean, the others are times. Yeah. North Korea is so sad. Like whenever you hear the stories of survivors get out of there.
I had a friend who went to ETCA
You know, we're the biggest.
from South Korea, but her mom was born in North
What?
Korea,
China and India probably have more
and
people.
she said it was awful.
Yeah. Everything I've ever heard
Like,
about it was terrible.
They used to go like every summer, and since it got really bad, they don't go anymore.
I bet.
I would be too scared to even
Yeah, I mean,
consider
because
going.
if they decided you aren't going back, you're just not going back.
Oh, yeah. So
If they don't want you to go home, you're not going.
That's right.
we have the most powerful military.
That's right.
I believe
US
it.
Marines practice combat gliding.
We practice
I've
like the
never
craziest
heard
things.
that before.
What is
I saw this meme, and it was this guy who was in the snow, like doing push-ups with no hands, and it was like the U.S. and it showed like a guy doing one arm, and then the guy said Russian military, and he was doing push-ups with no arms. It was funny.
Crazy. Hey, next slide, same picture. So that's my
Why?
bad. Because I guess I messed up. Hey,
Oh.
that's all right. Forgive me.
You
So-
shouldn't mess up, Mr. Whitehair, that's.
Yeah, how dare you be a human?
For me. Though the Allies begrudgingly accepted Wilson's 14 points, he was forced to compromise on each and every one. Woo-hoo. So, in the Treaty of Versailles, harsh terms were enacted on Germany. So remember, they were the losers. The Allies were mad at them. Wilson called upon our allies, the French and the British, to ease up because things could get worse. They said, boo-hoo, we know better. So the Treaty of Versailles, called for reparations from Germany. Reparations are when you are seen as so bad for the things you've done. You need to not only pay back for what you broke, but you need to pay back kind of like a punishment amount.
Cut
So-
your hands off.
Well, the example here is they're going to have to start paying Britain and especially France a lot of money. So much money it's going to destroy their economy yearly. Germany. They're going to start doing so much later on. We're actually going to loan them money just to make their payments. Forfeiture of much of its territory. So they had to give up a lot of German land. Loss of its navy and merchant marine. So merchant marine is kind of like your government's ships that don't do warfare. They do, like during wartime, they're the ones who do supplies and things like that, maybe. A severe shrinking of its army, and it had to accept blame for the entire war. And it had a lot of other legal restrictions as well. It's like what they could and could not build, who and how they could trade, their laws, and the government was under constant review. It was like they lost kind of like the country in a lot of ways. The treaty also called for the creation of a League of Nations, which is like the UN today, which is where you had the major countries of the world would come together and make agreements on certain things such as trade laws, international treaties, and war and peace. And the creation of buffer states. So the buffer states like this, it's like you have your country, then there's a country you're super scared of. So you make buffer states, which are little bitty countries in between the two of you. So that in case there's like some bad stuff, it'll just affect your little neighbors instead of you. And it's the same countries that were essentially, some of them were the same countries that were buffer states between Europe and the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire earlier, where they would do a lot of the like holding back of the invasions and stuff like that. But this time it's to protect Western Europe from communism. They saw it as an infectious thing. Europe had seen something similar to this hundreds of years ago with the Jacobins after the beginning of the French Revolution, where you'd have these groups of revolutionaries go into countries near France and try to instigate their own revolutions there. Europe was like, no, we don't want to go through that. Many nations feared that communism would spread into their borders as clandestine cells of Marxists could be found throughout Europe. So, I mean, it's not really a government course, but Marxist can be summed up as essentially people who are like hyper socialist, right? Like everything's owned by the state. It's supposed to be hyper democratic, but it never turns out that way. Everything is supposed to be democratic in that the
So
common
Athens.
person.
Athens, Greece.
Yes, but more so than that, cultural too. So everything from like music and art has to be something that the normal person's supposed to like. So no more high art, no more, even a lot of things as far as
No
like.
more trade theater? So no more trade theater?
I guess I don't know. So like things like the way people dress all has to be the same. It's democratic. Everybody's the same. You're all the people. The way you think of the family unit, it's always atheistic. It's supposed to put science first, but science has to align with the political needs.
What the heck?
So I don't know. It's like
Sounds like Harrison Bergeron.
I don't know what's that.
What?
The first short story we listened to in physics.
Oh, I thought he said my.
What was it about?
No, it's on the Harrison Bergeron,
Harrison Bergeron,
which is a short story about short quality.
everybody's equal and literally everything.
They
I heard somebody
handicapped.
quote that the other day.
It was probably me.
Yeah, well, no, I mean like on a podcast.
They were handicapped to the lowest common denominator.
Mhm. That's
So
what happens.
They were all dumb.
Yeah.
They were the people who were strong would put they would put weights on. The people who were smart, they put like interrupters in their ears so they couldn't think. The people who were good at things were made not good at those things for with various reasons. And the people who defied got shot.
Well, you know why this happens? It's like, okay, the Marxist revolution in China and in Russia, a lot of the revolutionaries who were the most gun-ho and the most violent and fought the hardest were the first ones that were killed right after the revolution. Why? Because they were seen as dangerous. So their own comrades killed them. And then the smartest people who were seen as the best thinkers, especially thinking outside of the box, they were killed. Because if you think outside the box, you're going to think outside of what they want you to think. It's normal. In Soviet Russia, later on, like in the 40s and stuff like that, people who were too smart or creative and outspoken constantly wound up in the gulag because they were seen as intimidation. If you're somebody who's standing out too much, you might stand out above your superior, or you might prove the state wrong. Official thought was so important to the Soviets.
They were scared of the smart.
They were scared of smart people, and even their version of the CIA, we call the KGB, they weren't allowed to think that there could be a successful economy outside of communism. And so they thought that Americans were doing communism better when they noticed we weren't having fits of starvation and our economy was doing well. So
That's
the
why they look
KGB,
for those wires.
yeah, they were constantly looking for secret computers that was running the economy better than they were running their economy, because they figured supercomputers were doing it, because they couldn't figure out that it was actually market economy, like just natural trade was actually making us successful. They thought that we were just doing communism better because they weren't allowed to think outside the box.
Yes, because we are just better communists.
Yeah, that's what they figured.
We're just such good communists that we're not even communists.
They thought that we were communists who allowed corporatism to exist.
What?
And that's what China's doing now. They allow corporatism to exist, and Russia does that too now. After the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism in Russia, they changed the government as far as the rules, but those old communists were still in charge.
Right.
And so all they really did is they allowed.
Isn't Vladimir Putin a communist?
He grew up one, yeah. I mean, he was a KGB guy. Yeah, go ahead. So he was a trained spy and all that stuff, maybe assassin.
And they were like, "Oh my gosh, we love you."
I don't know. I mean, I hope he doesn't poison me
Well,
with
Star
radioactive
Wars,
material. Yeah.
My
Putin's
brother had an obsession with the Russian national anthem for a long time. It was so weird. Like, it was all summer, he would just sing it. And I was yeah, he just thought it was funny. And my mom was furious. She was like, if your grandparents heard you singing this.
Okay, so my friend has a thing with his Alexa,
Okay.
and when he says communism to his Alexa, what it'll be like, communism will reign forever, and then it'll play the Russian national anthem.
That's it. All right, so moving right along here. So here's a newspaper front page. So the Bisbee Daily Review. What's the headline?
President dangerously ill.
Yeah, President dangerously ill. So and you also see other things here too, Bolsheviks driven back by allies. So after the communist revolution, a lot of those World War I veterans and a lot of people who wanted to be free, they had essentially a civil war in Russia, and we aided them a little bit, but not that much. And so the Reds actually win, and they destroyed the opposition they call the Whites. There's nobody quite good there. This guy Wilson. He's going to have a series of devastating strokes, and it's going to debilitate him very badly. So while he's a sitting president, he's going to mostly be rendered where he's not going to be able to fulfill and do his job. So Wilson returned to America, but needed to submit the treaty to Congress for a 2/3 majority vote for ratification. That's how treaties work according to the Constitution. The president is supposed to do negotiations and talk to other countries, but it's Congress that has to ratify a treaty. Why would we have Congress do that? What's Congress's job?
Vote,
To make
I don't know.
laws. To make laws. A
Yes.
treaty is a law. If we make a treaty with another country, that has legal binding over us.
Haven't we tried to make a treaty with North Korea?
Yeah, there was attempts to make treaties at the end of the Korean War, but they didn't turn out that well. So we were still technically at war with them.
So they could just press a button and boom.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Oh,
They
yes,
could-
because the North Koreans definitely have that capability.
I don't think they have enough gas to make it to America.
But,
The North
I mean,
Koreans-
one day they could, and then we're
Oh,
all
yes,
like,
one day
haha,
when
they don't
there's-
have enough gas. And
One-
then they
one-
do, and then
Yeah,
we're
and when they launch that missile, it will get shot out of the air and nothing will happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully
what's that
They will die.
the big like
I'm hoping their
sound.
technology stays in the 1950s and just stays there.
Yeah, no, we have things.
Fire the
Yeah,
missiles.
yeah. Hopefully we won't have
Honestly,
to test that theory.
Yeah, we won't have to test
But-
that video.
They're
You know,
listening to us.
sometimes people get lucky. You know, we don't want that. We don't want to build
They
a nuke
wanna-
and
no.
accidentally makes it all the way over here.
They were getting our information through TikTok, and
Listen,
They
that's,
have-
that's China, but.
Yeah.
oh, never mind. They could be. Never mind. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's reasons why China wants to keep North Korea intact. It's kind of like a good bargaining chip.
And don't they make iPhones there? So what if there's like?
Most part, yeah.
Mm,
All right. So back to this. So yeah, Congress has to pass a treaty because it has law power over U.S. citizens, and we're like, no, only Congress can make laws. So that's why the president can't do it alone. Well, he's not supposed to. The Senate was controlled, however, by the Republican Party, the opposition party, and they were not too happy to lose U.S. sovereignty to the League of Nations, because the League of Nations had to think they were afraid could send American soldiers to war to die at the request of the League of Nations. And they're like, they didn't like the idea of Americans potentially going to war and dying because another country wants us to, right?
right.
So they're like, no thanks, that's our sovereignty. It's going to be led by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge. Wilson sought to bring his case to the people, to have the voters convince them to do this. He circuited 29 cities across the U.S. Of course, this is very stressful on the body. And during his trip, he suffered a series of debilitating strokes, leaving him half paralyzed.
Oh.
The treaty failed multiple votes in Congress due to fears the treaty would commit U.S. foreign troops to war,
Strokes are
or
scary.
troops to foreign wars, and the Americans would lose their sovereignty. So we would have less rights to control our own country. And we're like, no, wait. So the League of Nations failed to manifest due to no U.S. involvement. We're the ones who came up with the idea, and so the other nations, when they saw that we didn't do it, backed out too. And Wilson will spend the rest of his presidency in privacy. His wife and his cabinet are going to do most of the presidential duties after this, and they're going to keep it secret from the people.
Because he was disabled.
Yeah, so he had strokes, and so they wanted to, well, you know, they wanted, for one, I mean, like in a cynical point of view, you could say they just wanted to maintain power, but also like on a more human level, they didn't want to embarrass him and, you know, and make people panic and stuff. So there's reasons, you could say. Especially when Congress was controlled by the other party. That could have been something that they were just like, you know, like they didn't want to give the other side more power. But they got one slide left after this one, and that's going to end it for the series.
My favorite thing is about it being cold. So my hands aren't heavy when it's cold.
It's actually not that cold.
Our
This week it's
test-
80, so.
I know, but it's like cool.
It's cold in the morning now. It's really scary when it's cold in the morning because my windshield's frozen tonight.
Who's taking the PSAT next week?
I am.
Next
actually.
week. All of us.
It's on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
The 14th. It's always
So-
on the 14th.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
Every year it's on
administer
the
that.
14th.
In fact, Friday, we're gonna fill out the paperwork during third period.
Does it matter whether or not we pass or fail?
Oh wait, I'm not gonna be in this class on Friday.
I'm gonna say do your best, but
Do your
like,
best.
whatever you do, just do your best,
I'm gonna
so
take
you
a
can have an
practice test
accurate
on Sunday.
scoring, so you'll know what to improve upon. So what,
I
We're gonna take a practice test on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say, what were you saying?
I'm not gonna be here on Friday. I have a doctor's appointment.
This Friday?
Yeah, I leave early. But
Got it
I
right there,
can.
right there? Got that right there? Good.
And I feel like I can fill it out tomorrow sometime. I can ask. I have study hall.
Yeah, ask Ms. Coffin.
Okay.
Just go right to her
And
office.
then
But we are gonna have a makeup day on Monday, actually, so third period Monday, you can do it too.
Okay.
It's up to you. Yeah, she already just
I'd
got.
rather get it done.
Oh, you're right. She said makeup day's Monday. You're right. No school Monday. So yeah, no lecture on Monday. And
That guy's like, no.
we might not have a lecture on Wednesday too because of the PSAT. So
Oh yeah, we're not going to.
so yeah, if you're not here, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with you. We have to call the office and ask Ms. Coffin.
The PSAT is only 3 hours, whereas the SAT is more like
No, no,
4
no,
hours,
it's
5 hours.
Is there no writing portion or
No.
something?
We only have, the PSAT is literally just English,
Yeah, I
reading, and math.
Put it in my.
Mhm.
Or like,
Well, there's the calculator, no calculator, right?
there's calculator, no calculator's only 10 minutes, no calculator is 30 minutes.
Okay.
Something like that.
We'll see. We'll see.
think
I got the
PSAT is
manual.
only
I
10 minutes.
haven't looked at the PSAT part, only the SAT part.
I
So
just,
we'll see.
like, If
We'll
I,
see.
wait, are you done taking notes?
We got one more.
Oh, I thought you said you were done.
But yeah, like next week, we're gonna get through what we can. And then the following week, I'm hoping to have our midterm around the 20th.
No.
There we go. All right, kids. So last one.
I'm winning.
Second. All right, fine.
Uh,
You're fine. I forgive you.
Is it cold in here, y'all?
25?
Not to me. What?
Do we leave this class at 25?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
I really don't understand how I don't remember.
Because it's all weird. I mean, look at that.
No, even like,
950, 1110, 105, 225. It's
Oh
just,
my
it's just a
gosh.
jumble of
Last
numbers.
year, we tried to do this block schedule thing where we only had 3 minutes to get to class because our school sucked. And it took one day, it took the first day of school, and all the kids, like, I was like, this is not going to happen. So I went to our principal and I was like, listen, you need to give us our 5 minutes back. We're getting all these tardies. And we're having to walk back across campus to get a tardy, and then we miss half a class because it's super far. And so the classes were,
We had 3 minutes at one point, right?
3
Yeah, that
minutes.
was last year.
yeah, that's so annoying. Like, what is that? I can't
We can,
peek.
'cause
Yeah,
And
but
Ours
then-
is a very small campus.
I don't think I wrote a
Our
single
campus
tardy
was
last year.
big. Like, we had to walk outside.
Sorry.
Like,
Yeah, I know.
We
Y'all,
had our trailer park,
you had the portable
classrooms.
buildings, then you had the gym and.
Yeah,
and all
and
that.
the gym was all the way over here, and then you had to walk across the giant gym all the way to the class on the other side of the gym, and then it sucked.
Not to mention the tornadoes. All right, let's go ahead and
the
move on.
tornadoes, gosh.
All right, so y'all ready for the next one?
Second.
All right, so remember, you don't have to write all of it down. Just know that the big part here is that League of Nations did not go through because it was voted down. He's going to be going through some crippling strokes, and I think that's why we get, was it the 29th one, or I don't, okay. I had to look it up.
Because it got voted down.
Now, it got voted down, and he was not able to take his case to the people because he found out getting very, very sick. Strokes are serious business. That's, I mean, they're like
Just like.
heart attacks, and you gotta get it treated real
Okay,
quick.
Saturday.
Night.
All right.
Supposed to wait a week.
Last one for the day. But don't worry,
A picture.
I wrote
A
it right
picture.
on.
Oh,
There is-
Yeah.
It gets infected, be careful.
So, during this time period, like I told you, things weren't always peaceful. The problems with terrorism in the United States was a big deal. This is a bombing in Wall Street. During this time period, like I told you, in New York, you had basically a bombing week. Hey, if y'all are next to each other, go with a mask. So, and these were by anarchists and socialist groups, right? So they hated government, they hated police, they hated authority. hated religion, so sometimes they like vandalize, try to burn down churches and stuff, shoot cops, attempt to assassinate mayors. So it was like a lot of chaos.
This sounds like what's happening right now.
Could be the same groups. All right, so with the war over, many Americans want to get back to normal, especially war veterans returning home. Unfortunately, anarchists and communists began to enact acts of terror across the nation. They're pretty frustrated because Socialist Party of America had tried to run presidential candidates and stuff like that in the past. They never seemed to get more than like 2.5% of the vote, right? So they're like, well, if we can't win through votes, maybe we'll just do acts of terror to show our rage and make people too scared to go against us. In April of 1919 alone, 34 bombs were found at the homes of prominent individuals, ranging from J.P. Morgan to Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Around 1,000 radicals would be rounded up and deported, many to Russia. So a lot of people who are outspoken communists, we literally put them on boats and sent them off to communist Russia. And they were welcomed with open arms. Many of them died in the gulags. But yeah, like back then, if somebody was of a dangerous political ideology, like an anarchist or a communist, we deported them. So in the North and South, African American organizations would falsely be accused of socialism, however. So this is called the Red Scare. Yes, there are acts of terrorism going around by anarchists and communists. However, certain groups like the KKK would accuse Black people of joining these organizations. And most of these people were just like poor farmers. So they used it as an excuse for lynching. So yes, on one hand, you have real crimes and acts of terrorism being committed. On the other hand, you have people using it as an excuse to hurt innocent people. So
That's no good.
yeah, no bueno, right? So you see, sometimes bad people use things and they capitalize on it, right? So they use it for their own personal need. It's terrible. This is the last slide we have in this unit. When we pick up next time, we're going to talk about the 20s, the Great Depression, World War II, all that stuff.
We, like, the Roaring Twenties is like coming this year because we're going into a Great Depression as well. We kinda did.
Don't wish that on us.
No, I don't wish that on us, it just kind of happened a little bit.
Well, there are some financial problems, but the cool thing about the economy is it can really rebound.
Oh, yeah.
So
And it will.
let's just hope for that.
I should have just brought my volleyball clothes in my car.
You should have.
Yeah,
That's
go.
what I
I'm
would've
gonna
done.
be late. I'm gonna have to run.
Wait, why did they get put in gulags?
Oh, well, I mean, the reason is that even though they were communists and they were socialists, they had an idea of how they thought things should be. And they were like, look, Marx said this, Engels said that. Wouldn't that just be great if we lived like that? Well, when they went to Russia, they found the sick reality of a lot of ideological movements is that they're used as a tool to ensure certain people get to power. So when they went to Russia, they found that the whole great communist idea of equality, democratic equality, didn't exist. And so when they would challenge these things, they're like, hey, why are we doing this to our comrades? Why not X, Y, and Z? Well, for speaking out and things like that. Or they would get thrown to villain, or they would be seen as not perfect communists, right? They had what they would call bourgeois, like middle class business people ideas, and then that's like a taint, right? And they're like afraid they're going to just infect other people with these ideas. Same thing's going to happen after the Maoist revolution in the 50s and the 40s. You're going to have Chinese people flooding back to China because they're like, wow, communism sounds like a great thing. Our nation's been humiliated. We've been overrun by foreigners. We would love to have help the people out, the people's movement. Well, a lot of them wound up killed because they came back and they still had wanted personal freedom, and they wanted like, right to free speech and criticize and stuff like that. And they found out when they did that, when I'm getting shot. So it's like, what, well, no, it's pretty. Hey, we're gonna end the lecture there for today, so, we're gonna meet back on Friday.
Who is watching? We're like,
There's two now. I'm pretty sure Davison's there this time.